4 days of summer vacation, then school comes along just to end it.
Hey yo, welcome back to Cartoon Mania. Today we're diving into the world where every summer day is an opportunity to build a roller coaster or a rocket ship or avoid your sister's wrath. If you've ever wondered how these two pull off the impossible and how Candice keeps failing, you're in the right place.
Mom! Phineas and Ferb are making a title sequence!
And if you see this guy around, don't tell Dr. Doofenshmirtz. Let's keep it our little secret. Before diving into the first season, we should probably get to know the two brilliant minds behind the show's name. First up, we have Phineas Flynn, a creative and super ambitious boy with a head shaped like a triangle. His goal? To make his summer vacation unforgettable. Phineas is the talker of the team, always sharing ideas with his stepbrother Ferb Fletcher. Ferb, on the other hand, is more of the strong, silent type, but just as clever and ready to bring their wild ideas to life. Together, these two stepbrothers come up with crazy, fun, and sometimes pretty dangerous gadgets to make every summer day an adventure. And since we're talking introductions, we can't forget Candice, the oldest sibling in the Flynn-Fletcher family. Candice is always wound up and spends most of her time trying to bust her brothers for their wild inventions. You know, the classic "Mom, Phineas and Ferb are at it again" routine. But when she's not chasing after her brothers, she's either on her phone or with her bestie Stacy, or daydreaming about her crush Jeremy. Yeah, we'll talk more about them later. And last but not least, we've got Isabella. She's one of Phineas and Ferb's closest friends and loves getting involved in their outrageous projects. She's also the leader of the Fireside Girls troupe. Together, they help bring the boys' big ideas to life. Oh, and between you and me, Isabella has a major crush on Phineas, but shh, that's a secret too. Alright, enough with the introductions, let's dive into their first big creation from Season 1, Episode 1, called Roller Coaster. Okay, what better way to kick off summer than by building the most epic roller coaster ever? Candice isn't too thrilled, of course. How could Phineas and Ferb possibly clean up such a massive ride before their mom gets home? And also, where's Perry? This brings us to the show's other storyline, Perry the Platypus. He might seem like an ordinary pet, though I wouldn't call a platypus ordinary. But on top of that, Perry is actually a secret agent working under Major Monogram. Known as Agent P, he's always off on missions to stop the evil Dr. Doofenshmirtz. Today, Doofenshmirtz has wrapped the entire eastern seaboard in tinfoil using his giant magnet to change the Earth's rotation. Don't even ask why, you know, he's all about these big, wacky plans. Meanwhile, Phineas, Ferb, and their friends are taking their roller coaster for a spin, zooming through the whole tri-state area. But just as the ride gets going, Doofenshmirtz's magnet accidentally pulls the roller coaster out of sight.
Look, see? Okay, I give up. What am I supposed to be looking at?
Thanks to some quick thinking from Agent P, he saves the day, the magnet is taken away, and everything returns to normal. Just in time for their mom to get back home. Candice, of course, is left wondering what she's supposed to be looking at. Now moving on to Episode 2, Lawn Gnome Beach Party of Terror, we get a rare moment where Candice doesn't try to bust her brothers. This time, Phineas and Ferb decide to build a beach in their backyard, and Candice thinks it could really boost her popularity. With Jeremy on the way, Candice gets so caught up in the party that she forgets all about telling their mom. Phineas and Ferb throw the best beach bash ever, complete with their hit song, Backyard Beach. Candice even gets crowned Queen Wahine of the beach, and her day gets even better when she gets to slow dance with Jeremy. But just as she's enjoying her moment, her mom calls to say she's on her way home. And damn it, where's Perry again? While the boys were building their beach, Perry was off stopping Doofenshmirtz's latest evil plan, taking back all the lawn gnomes in the tri-state area. Why, you ask? Well, Doofenshmirtz shares a bit about his childhood, revealing that his family once had to give up their beloved lawn gnome. And to keep the garden safe, young Doofenshmirtz had to stand in as a human lawn gnome. Yeah, he had a pretty tough childhood. So now as an adult, he's trying to take back every lawn gnome just like the one he lost. Doofenshmirtz may be goofy, but hey, after all that, you can kind of understand where he's coming from. Just as Dr. Doofenshmirtz wraps up his story, he accidentally frees Agent P. In the chaos that follows, their battle causes the Destructinator to suck up the entire backyard beach. Now let's dive into episode 3, Flop Stars, where we get to experience some of the catchy original tunes that made Phineas and Ferb famous. It all starts one morning at the usual breakfast. Phineas and Ferb's mom, Linda, shares the secret formula for becoming a one-hit wonder. First, make a smash hit that tops the charts. Second, throw a diva tantrum. And third, watch your hit become elevator music. And then finally, go on a reunion tour. She knows all this because she was once a pop star herself, back in her Lindana days. With this, Phineas has a light bulb moment. They're going to become one-hit wonders too. Kind of funny considering how many songs they'll end up performing throughout the series, right? As the boys start creating their new hit single, Candice heads to the Googleplex Mall with her friend Stacy. Candice is entering a singing contest to become the next Super American Pop Teen Idol star. The big prize? The 100th contestant gets to perform with the hottest new band, PFT. So who's contestant number 100? You guessed it, Candice. And who is PFT? Well, none other than Phineas and the Ferb Tones. After writing their hit song, Gitchy Gitchy Goo that morning, Phineas and Ferb have shot straight to the top. Later, Candice and Phineas are invited to meet with big-time music executives who want to make them the next big thing. But Phineas and Ferb stick to their plan. They're going to be one-hit wonders and no more. Phineas even checks off the diva tantrum requirement by dramatically storming out of the office. Then in the elevator, a calm version of Gitchy Gitchy Goo plays, taking off the elevator music box. Then there's just one final step left, the reunion performance. Back at the Googleplex Mall, Candice is heartbroken, thinking her dreams of stardom are over because of her brothers. But Jeremy encourages her to perform anyway, and with a smile, she joins Phineas and the Ferb Tones on stage, singing her heart out. Now let's move on to episode 4, The Fast and the Phineas, where we meet the Fireside Girls. Today, Phineas and Ferb want to join the Swamp Oil 500, a huge car race happening in town. But first, they need a car, so naturally they modify their mom's car into a race car. Isabella promises Phineas a pit crew for the race, and when they arrive at the track, she shows up with the Fireside Girls.
See you in the pits.
Isabella's troop, Fireside Girls 46231, is led by her and often helps Phineas and Ferb with their inventions. The girls are super smart and know tons of things thanks to their trusty Fireside handbooks. Their skills come in handy throughout the series, but today they'll be working as Phineas and Ferb's pit crew.
Thanks.
Get it, Ferb.
Meanwhile, high above the race, Dr. Doofenshmirtz is up to no good in his blimp. He's captured Agent P and plans to create a monopoly using his latest invention, the Deflatinator. His plan? To deflate everything that's inflatable. After that, anyone who needs something reinflated will have to go through him. I wish we had that for the inflating prices too. Back on the racetrack, Phineas and Ferb are dominating thanks to the Fireside Girls' excellent pit work and Ferb's expert driving skills, by the way. But things start to go wrong for Doofenshmirtz. His blimp begins to plummet from the sky, eventually crashing into the broadcasting tower, knocking the race off the air. Candice, who had been desperately trying to get her mom to see the race on TV, misses yet another chance to bust her brothers. And as always, Agent P foils Doofenshmirtz's evil plan. Next up in the episode 5, Raging Bully, where we meet a couple more iconic characters. Buffert, the tough but secretly kind-hearted bully, and Baljeet, the brainy overachiever. At the Googleplex Mall, Phineas accidentally drops his ice cream on Buffert's pants. Buffert challenges Phineas to a fight, but before things get too heated, none other than heavyweight boxing champion Evander Holyfield steps in. Yep, the real Evander Holyfield, voiced by the man himself. He offers to train Phineas for the big match. After a classic training montage, Phineas and Buffert prepare to face off. But instead of boxing, they will be thumb wrestling. Just as the match begins, Candice manages to get her thumb in front of the camera. Buffert quickly gains the upper hand, but when all hope seems lost, a scoop of ice cream falls from the sky and lands on Phineas. Bufford bursts out laughing, and now that both have been embarrassed, Phineas calls the match off. They're even. And where did that ice cream come from? Of course, it's from Dr. Doofenshmirtz. You see, today is his birthday, and he's reminiscing about his miserable childhood. On the day he was born, both of his parents kind of forgot to show up. Ouch. When Heinz Doofenshmirtz was 5 years old, life wasn't exactly a party. With no friends and absent parents, he had to throw his own surprise birthday party, complete with a homemade Dunberry cake and everything.
Hey kid, lock up when you're done, okay?
"Hey kid, lock up, we're done," was all he got from the staff. As if that wasn't bad enough, on his way home, his cake attracted a swarm of Dunberry bats, leaving him cakeless and embarrassed. Meanwhile, Agent P catches up with Dr. Doofenshmirtz, who's hovering over the boxing ring in his flying machine. They engage in a classic showdown, with Doofenshmirtz threatening to smear Agent P's face with ice cream for ultimate embarrassment. But at that moment, Agent P calls in a giant whale, because why not, which swoops in, knocking the ice cream from Doofenshmirtz's hands right down onto Phineas. With the upper hand, Agent P causes Doofenshmirtz to crash into his own machine, sending it toppling into the boxing ring cleanup party. And as always, just in time, everyone clears out before Linda gets back like nothing ever happened. Speaking of ice cream, the next episode, Ice Cream, You Scream, where Phineas and Ferb set out to make the most epic sundae ever for Isabella, who just had her tonsils removed. Things take a wacky turn when Ferb accidentally mixes up the blueprints with Doofenshmirtz's plans for a Spacinator. Eagle-eyed viewers might notice a fun similarity between Phineas and Ferb and Doofenshmirtz. Both are incredibly inventive and spend their days making crazy devices. And just as Candice is always trying to bust her brothers, Vanessa, Doofenshmirtz's daughter, is constantly trying to prove to her mom that her dad is a legit evil scientist. Both Phineas and Ferb and Doofenshmirtz complete their projects, though neither realizes they've built the wrong thing. Vanessa, thinking her dad has built a space laser to destroy everything he finds annoying, calls her mom, Charlene, to prove her point. Meanwhile, Candice is on her usual mission to get her mom to catch the boys in action. But when the dust settles, it turns out Doofenshmirtz only made an ice cream machine, not exactly the most diabolical creation. Phineas and Ferb, however, have unintentionally constructed a rocket-powered space laser. Thankfully, they didn't attach the actual laser part, all thanks to the blueprint mix-up. As usual, their creation vanishes before their mom ever sees it, and Vanessa's plan to prove her dad's evilness flops once again. I mean, an ice cream maker isn't exactly a criminal masterpiece after all. Next up is Get That Bigfoot Out of My Face, where the Flynn Fletcher family takes a break from their usual summer shenanigans for a peaceful weekend at their grandparents' cabin by the lake. Along for the ride are Bufford, Isabella, and the Fireside Girls. While Candice is encouraged by her grandmother, Betty Jo, to have fun, she and Candice brainstorm a scheme that make the weekend more interesting. Even Perry tags along, though he soon sneaks away for a meeting with Major Monogram. This episode gives us a rare peek into Major Monogram's past at the Academy, complete with a funny "I'm not your father" moment.
I'm not your father, and it's been decided.
Meanwhile, Perry finds Doofenshmirtz surprisingly not up to any evil plans this week. It's his day off. Instead, he's going on a date with someone he's met online. How fun! This episode highlights the quirky dynamic between Doofenshmirtz and Agent P. They aren't mortal enemies, more like colleagues who are oddly friendly when they're off the clock. Back at the cabin, the kids gather around a campfire for spooky stories. Phineas puts on a show about the legendary Bigfoot, and with Ferb's help, they give everyone a good scare. Of course, Phineas and Ferb never keep things simple. This time, they create an inflatable Bigfoot, complete with growls and everything. Candice and Betty Jo get in on the fun, staging an even bigger prank where Candice gets eaten by an even scarier monster from the woods. Typical campfire antics from the Flynn Fletcher family. In It's a Mud World, we focus on Lawrence Fletcher, Ferb's dad and Phineas's stepdad. Originally from London, Lawrence moved to the US and eventually fell in love with Linda Flynn, bringing the two families together. Meanwhile, Candice is having trouble with the parallel parking part of her driving lessons, and she's worried it'll stop her from getting her learner's permit. Feeling frustrated, Candice has lost all confidence behind the wheel. What's the best way to get the confidence back? Drive a monster truck, of course! To help their sister out, Phineas and Ferb turn their mom's car into an epic monster truck, complete with a racetrack. In an unexpected twist, Lawrence actually notices their creation for the first time. He's like, "Did you know the boys have a monster truck in the backyard?" "Honestly, you're as bad as Candice," Linda replies.
Honestly, you're as bad as Candice.
The boys' track ends up being a huge hit, attracting real monster truck drivers, including a pro named Buck Buckerson. Buck mocks Candice, sending her into an epic driving frenzy that impresses both the crowd and Buck himself. Now the final challenge, drum rolls please, parallel parking. With her confidence restored, Candice nails the final test, leaving Buck Buckerson and the others in the dust, or rather in the mud. "Candice, why on earth are you covered in mud?" Linda asks as the episode wraps up. Finally, in episode 21, It's About Time, we witness one of Phineas and Ferb's craziest adventures yet, time travel. The Flynn Fletcher family visits the Museum of Natural History, where the boys discover an old, unfinished time machine. After a bit of tinkering, they, along with Candice, find themselves traveling back in time. Now, there's just one small problem. They're stuck in 300 million BC. While Phineas and Ferb try to figure out a way back home, we check in on Perry and Doofenshmirtz, who has surprisingly found a new nemesis, a secret agent panda named Peter. Yep, another animal secret agent. This episode reveals for the first time that Perry isn't the only animal agent. In fact, all the animal agents work for an organization called OWCA, which is short for Organization Without a Cool Acronym. But don't worry, by the end, Agent P and Doofenshmirtz are back to their usual love-hate rivalry, exactly as it should be. Meanwhile, Candice, Phineas, and Ferb are busy running from a T-Rex and other prehistoric creatures, and in a stroke of brilliance, Vanessa scratches a message into the mud, changing the fossilized footprint back in the present. Isabella and the Fireside Girls, ever resourceful, decode the message and manage to build their very own time machine to save the day. Oh man, I need one of those Fireside Girl manuals. Just in time, literally, the Fireside Girls rescue Candice and the boys from the jaws of the T-Rex. Crisis averted. In the next episode, Traffic Cam Caper, we get another look at OWCA. So one of the key rules for the animal agents is to keep their cover as regular pets, or the whole organization could come crumbling down. After what seems to be another typical day of adventure for Phineas and Ferb, possibly involving a trip to the moon, the Flynn Fletcher family sits down for dinner. Lawrence mentions getting a traffic ticket thanks to a camera. Candice overhears it and realizes this camera might just have captured her brother's antics on film, finally giving her the proof she needs to bust them. At the same time, Perry is called to a secret mission by Major Monogram. There has been a security breach, and it turns out the same traffic camera caught not only Phineas and Ferb's activities, but also everything Agent P has been up to. So, in an unusual twist, Perry has to work against Candice to keep her from getting her hands on the footage. Candice proudly declares that she has proof, but Agent P has other plans. To prevent her from getting the evidence, he teams up with Doofenshmirtz, who brings in his giant robot butler, Norm. With Norm's help, Agent P manages to snatch the footage and a wild chase across the tri-state area ensues. It all culminates on a rising bridge where Candice is forced to choose between the tape and saving her brother. Naturally, she picks Phineas, and Agent P escapes with the footage, delivering it back to OWCA. At OWCA headquarters, various animal agents, Major Monogram and Carl the intern, nervously wait for Agent P's return. When Perry finally arrives and slides the tape across the table, the room breathes a sigh of relief. The day is saved once again. In the next episode, Put That Putter Away, Stacy steps in for a sick Candice who's bedridden with a cold. Phineas, Ferb, and their friends had planned to spend the day at the Little Duffers, the local mini golf course. But the place is in terrible shape and no one is interested in playing there anymore. So naturally, Phineas and Ferb decide to build their own epic mini golf course. Stacy is tasked with finding out what the boys are up to and reporting back to Candice. But much like Candice, she gets swept up in the sheer coolness of Phineas and Ferb's creation. While the boys are enjoying their mini golf day, a very tired Perry sneaks away from a meeting with Major Monogram. Agent P's request for a vacation day gets denied, but luckily today seems like an easy one. Doofenshmirtz isn't plotting anything evil, he's actually taking the day off. So in a strange twist, Perry ends up spending a relaxing day with Doofenshmirtz by the pool. But things aren't quite so relaxing for Candice. Stacy is having too much fun with Phineas and Ferb's mini golf course, even joining in on the musical montage. Realizing she's on her own, Candice decides to take matters into her own hands. Unfortunately for her though, Doofenshmirtz has a new invention: the atomic leaf blowerinator. His plan to get back at his annoying neighbor by blowing all the leaves back onto their lawn. However, things go haywire, and the windmill from the boys' mini golf course gets blown away straight back to Little Duffers, giving the old mini golf course a much needed boost in business. "Sorry I didn't bust your brothers," Stacy says. It's okay," Candice replies, resigned. And in the next episode, Phineas and Ferb get busted. It seems like Candice's dream might finally come true. The episode opens with Phineas and Ferb on top of a giant tower, building a flying car out of their mom's station wagon. Candice drags her mom into the backyard, where shockingly Linda actually sees it. But any excitement Candice feels is quickly overshadowed by her mom's anger. A flying car may be cool, but nothing beats Linda's frustration. Everything falls apart when the tower holding the flying car collapses right onto the house, leading to Phineas and Ferb being sent off to a reform school. This is Candice's dream come true. Finally, her brothers are in trouble. "This is the best day of my life," she cheers. Phineas and Ferb arrive at the Smile Away Reformatory School, which feels more like a military boot camp than a school. But instead of fostering discipline and responsibility, the place is designed to crush creativity and break the spirits of anyone who walks through its doors. Back home, Candice begins to realize something important. Despite all their wild inventions and crazy stunts, Phineas and Ferb are still her little brothers, and deep down, she loves them. With that, Candice and Jeremy set off in the flying car, built by Phineas and Ferb by the way, to rescue them. That night, the two arrive at the reform school and come up with a plan. Disguising themselves as Morty Williams, a reporter covering the school, they manage to trick the headmaster into locking himself in the janitor's closet. With him out of the way, they make their move to save Phineas and Ferb. The chase reaches its peak at a cliff, with the flying car damaged and barely working. In a tearful moment, Candice confesses to Phineas and Ferb that she's always been proud to be their sister and feels guilty for being the reason they lost their creative spark. Her heartfelt words bring them back to their usual selves, just in time to hatch a plan. But the headmaster is closing in fast and corners them all at the cliff's edge. Just when it seems like there is no escape, a massive robotic spider bursts out of the ground, piloted by Perry the Platypus and Dr. Doofenshmirtz. Wait, so has Perry's secret identity finally been revealed? Not exactly, because things take a ridiculous turn and it turns out the entire ordeal was just one big dream. Like Phineas and Ferb were never actually busted at all. "Agent P, your cover's been blown. We'll need to relocate you," Major Monogram declares, but of course, it's all part of the dream. The reality, Phineas and Ferb are safe, sound, and ready for more adventures. In the season finale, Unfair Science Fair, Phineas and Ferb's day starts like any other summer day. The boys are brainstorming their next big project when Isabella rushes in, but instead of her usual "what you doing," she tells them to check on Baljeet, who's in the middle of a crisis. Now, Baljeet is on the verge of getting an A-, which for him is a catastrophe. To help him avoid academic doom, Phineas and Ferb agree to help him build a portal to Mars for the upcoming science fair. Meanwhile, Agent P is hot on Dr. Doofenshmirtz's trail as the evil scientist is on his way to the same science fair with a nefarious plan to finally win. Yes, win, not destroy anything this time. It turns out Doofenshmirtz has a long and bitter history with science fairs, having lost year after year to the dreaded baking soda volcano. In fact, he's been outdone by a baking soda volcano in everything from science fairs to poetry competitions. Now he's determined to take first place with his own massive baking soda volcano. Baljeet's Mars portal is a huge hit with his teacher, earning him the sacred A+. But just as things seem to be going well, Doofenshmirtz accidentally unplugs the portal, causing it to malfunction. In a mad dash to fix it, Baljeet tries everything and eventually plugs it into a high voltage socket. The portal powers up, but instead of stabilizing, it sends out a beam that sucks Doofenshmirtz into it, launching him straight to Mars. Luckily, Phineas and Ferb also step through the portal in time to follow him, setting up the final episode of the season. In Unfair Science Fair Redux, the story picks up with Candice, who's having a rough day. Jeremy isn't answering her calls, nor is Stacy, and she starts to worry that everyone's avoiding her. In her despair, she sets out to find a faraway place to start fresh, unknowingly stepping through the malfunctioning portal and landing on Mars. Alone and frustrated, she stumbles across one of NASA's Mars rovers. But even that quickly shuts down. In a fit of anger, Candice stops on the rover, attracting the attention of some nearby Martians. Impressed by her strength, the Martians declare Candice their queen, showering her with praise and adoration. Meanwhile, Phineas and Ferb, having fixed the portal, arrive on Mars to rescue her. But to their surprise, Candice is reluctant to leave. Being queen of the Martians has its perks after all. However, it's not long before Candice starts to feel overwhelmed by the constant attention and longs for some alone time. Realizing that her friends back on Earth don't actually hate her, Candice agrees to return home. But the Martians aren't ready to let their queen go so easily. They transform into one giant green monster and chase after their siblings. Baljeet opens the portal just in time, allowing Candice, Phineas, and Ferb to escape back to Earth, where things return to normal. And that's a wrap on the first season of Phineas and Ferb. Of course, we couldn't touch on every contraption, but here are a few honorable mentions. Episode 8, Phineas and Ferb build robots to help them with all their big ideas. Episode 11, inspired by their dad's old snow cone machine, the boys create Swinter, a combination of summer and winter. And in episode 20, they shrink down to subatomic levels to retrieve Isabella's sash from inside her dog's stomach. Yikes. Episode 37, things take a strange turn when Candice and Perry switch bodies after Phineas and Ferb create a short-range teleporter. There's a teenage girl in here, a teenage girl, Agent P! Becomes a hilarious moment as Perry tries to navigate life in Candice's body, and vice versa. Fast forward to episode 44, where Phineas and Ferb build 2 functional rockets to visit the stars. And moving on to episode 3, tip of the day. Here's a fun question, what's the tip of a shoelace called? An aglet, of course, but before this episode, hardly anyone knew that, but thanks to Phineas and Ferb, the word has become common knowledge. The boys, realizing how underappreciated the aglet is, decided to dedicate an entire day to spreading aglet awareness. They even plan a worldwide concert to celebrate the humble shoelace tip. At the Aglet concert, Phineas, Ferb, and their friends are making waves across the globe, all while Doofenshmirtz has a plan of his own. He's created a device that can erase embarrassing memories using his Read My Mindinator and a universal remote. But when he trips over his shoelaces, his thoughts shift to the aglet, and he accidentally erases the entire aglet phenomenon from everyone's minds. Except ours, of course. We'll never forget the aglet. In elementary, my dear Stacy, the Flynn Fletcher family travels to London to visit Lawrence's side of the family, including his parents, Reginald and Winifred Fletcher. While the rest of the family is excited to see the sights, Candice and Stacy are bored out of their minds. That is, until they stumble across a collection of Sherlock Holmes novels. Inspired by the detective tales, the girls decide to play detectives themselves. While the family heads off to visit the London Eye, Perry sneaks away to meet with Major Monogram. Since OWCA is out of their usual jurisdiction in England, they team up with a British spy, Agent 000. Together, Agent P and 000 race to stop Dr. Doofenshmirtz, who has an ambitious new plan, relocating Big Ben to the tri-state area. Well, the tables have turned for once for UK, huh? Candice and Stacy, meanwhile, are conducting their own investigation, trying to figure out what Phineas and Ferb are up to. Dressed in Sherlock Holmes-style hats, they conduct interviews, stakeouts, and gather clues, eventually realizing that Phineas and Ferb are building a water slide attached to Big Ben. Just as Candice is about to bust her brothers and prove she's the next Sherlock Holmes, Doofenshmirtz sets his plan into motion. Big Ben starts to lift off the ground, together with the water slide, but the structure begins to crumble. Of course, Agent P arrives just in time to foil Doofenshmirtz's plan, sending Big Ben back to its rightful place in London. Now next up is Chez Platypus, where Phineas and Ferb open the trendiest new restaurant in town. It seems like the perfect opportunity for Candice and Jeremy to finally have a romantic date. Even better, there's a rumor that Jeremy is planning to ask Candice out for a special evening. Speaking of dates, Dr. Doofenshmirtz hasn't exactly been lucky in love recently. So unlucky, in fact, that he's vowed to take drastic action if his date goes poorly tonight. If things go south, Doofenshmirtz plans to destroy the entire concept of love, literally, using his D-Loveinator satellite, which is capable of erasing love from the entire tri-state area. Well, let's all hope for a smooth evening because it's date night across the tri-state. Candice and Jeremy are also hoping for a romantic night out, but they hit a snag when Bufford, acting as the bouncer, takes his job a bit too seriously. No one gets into the trendy Chez Platypus restaurant without a reservation, or apparently a bribe. Doofenshmirtz may not approve of bribes, but Bufford knows how to hustle. As Candice and Jeremy wait outside, we check in on Doofenshmirtz's date, and it's not going well. Love is hanging by a thread, but in a surprising twist, his date turns out to be a fan of evil schemes, and the two hit it off remarkably well. With love in the air, Doofenshmirtz decides he no longer needs his D-Loveinator, sparing the tri-state area. As for Candice and Jeremy, they never actually get into the Chez Platypus. Turns out platypus-themed restaurants are so 4 hours ago. Yep, the trends move fast here, but no worries, cause Phineas and Ferb give them the backyard itself, so Candice and Jeremy enjoy a quiet, romantic dinner under the stars. Oh, I feel nothing, Doofenshmirtz says, satisfied that everything's worked out. Next up is one of the most iconic episodes called The Chronicles of Meep. It all begins when Phineas and Ferb accidentally shoot a spaceship out of the sky with a remote-controlled baseball, causing the ship's adorable occupant Meep to crash land on Earth. "That is the cutest thing I've ever seen in my life," Phineas exclaims, as the gang quickly gets to work repairing Meep's ship. And while all this is happening, Perry is off to thwart Doofenshmirtz's latest plot, which involves, wait for it, carpets. Yep, Doofenshmirtz has covered his entire evil lair with carpets. Why, as one might ask? Well, it's tied to one of his many strange backstories. It turns out young Doofenshmirtz was abandoned and raised by ocelots. Yep, ocelots. Anyway, this led to a rather pungent lifestyle, so bad, in fact, that no one wanted to be around him. He ended up working at a carnival dunk booth, and not even as the guy being dunked, but the ball people threw. Damn, and I thought my childhood trauma was bad. Feeling lonely, young Heinz bought a balloon, painted a face on it, and named it Balloony, his best friend. But one tragic night, while working as the family lawn gnome, Balloony floated away, never to be seen again. So what does this have to do with carpets? Well, carpets create static electricity, and balloons are attracted to static. With his static electro-amplifioninator, Doofenshmirtz plans to use static electricity to finally reunite with Balloony. Meanwhile, back with Phineas and Ferb, things take a wild turn when they're captured by an intergalactic criminal named Mitch, who at first glance seemed like a pretty nice guy. Candice, with Meep's help, takes to the skies on her bike powered by remote-control baseballs to rescue the boys. On board the ship, Meep and Mitch face off in an epic battle, but things take a surprising twist when Doofenshmirtz crashes through the ceiling, and lo and behold, Balloony is there. Unfortunately for Doofenshmirtz, Balloony refuses to leave with him. Perry arrives just in time to help, and the villainous Mitch is subdued by Meep, allowing Candice and the kids to escape safely. Now, the next episode, The Baljeetles, focuses on Baljeet, who's struggling with his confidence. He's been attending a rock and roll summer camp, but no matter how hard he tries, he just can't find his inner rock star. Phineas and Ferb step in to help him embrace the rocker within, but Baljeet is more concerned with getting a good grade at camp than rocking out. Meanwhile, Candice and Stacy head to the Summer Rocks concert where Stacy's been feeling like a third wheel lately between Candice and Jeremy. But as soon as they arrive at the concert, Stacy meets Coltrane, one of Jeremy's friends, and they hit it off right away. With Phineas and Ferb backing him up, Baljeet's band, the Baljeetles, prepares for their big performance. Still worried about his grades, Baljeet struggles to fully embrace his rockstar persona. Backstage, Coltrane reveals to Baljeet that there are no grades at rock camp, and something snaps in Baljeet. In a fit of rage, he finally unleashes his inner rock star, headbanging and belting out a song called Give Me a Grade, which blows the audience away. Looks like Baljeet had a rocker inside him all along. Next up is Phineas and Ferb's Quantum Boogaloo, where the boys decide to mess with space-time continuum. This time, they're not traveling backward but forward to the future. They're searching for a tool to complete one of their inventions, but along the way, they run into adult Candice, like 20 years older and still trying to bust her brothers. Not only does adult Candice have kids of her own, but she's still on a mission to finally show her mom what Phineas and Ferb were up to all those years. Seizing her chance, Candice takes a time machine back to the day the boys built their first roller coaster, determined to catch them in the act. She succeeds, but in doing so, she changes the entire timeline. When adult Candice returns to the future, it's not the bright and happy place she remembers. It's a dystopian nightmare. In this alternate future, Doofenshmirtz has taken over as the Emperor of Danville. His evil reign comes with a few quirky rules, like mandatory lab coats for everyone and renaming every citizen Joe. Realizing the disaster she's caused, Candice must travel back in time again to stop herself from busting her brothers. She does, restoring the timeline and bringing everything back to normal. And the key takeaway? Never mess with the space-time continuum. Now that's super useful stuff, definitely keep it in mind. And this season wraps up with Phineas and Ferb Christmas Vacation, where the boys trade in their summer antics for holiday hijinks. To show their appreciation for Santa Claus, Phineas and Ferb build a luxurious rest stop for him, complete with a sauna and reindeer lounge. Meanwhile, Dr. Doofenshmirtz has a new plan, using his Naughtyinator to make everyone in the tri-state area naughty, ensuring no one gets any Christmas presents. But there's a twist. Doofenshmirtz doesn't actually hate Christmas. In fact, his real Christmas wish is to gain the ability to hate Christmas, because deep down he loves the holiday season. Phineas and Ferb, undeterred, continue with their plan to make sure Santa has the best Christmas ever. Phineas and Ferb decide to make Danville one big thank you card to Santa, lighting up the entire city in a plan they call Operation Bright Lights Big Belly. With the help of everyone in town, Danville transforms into a dazzling Christmas wonderland, truly a holiday spectacle. Meanwhile, over at Doofenshmirtz Evil Incorporated, a group of carolers arrive, demanding figgy pudding and refusing to leave until they get some. This annoys Dr. Doofenshmirtz, so much so that he activates his Naughtyinator. The machine seems to work perfectly, and back at the North Pole, Santa receives a sudden flood of last-minute naughty reports, and all from Danville. Realizing something's wrong, Phineas and Ferb take it upon themselves to save Christmas, confident that the citizens of Danville are actually nice. They boost the signal from the local radio station to send a message to the North Pole. In response, two elves show up, immediately suspecting that something fishy is going on. There's no way an entire city could turn naughty all at once. In the grand finale, Phineas and Ferb build their own flying sleigh and take it to the skies, playing the role of Santa for Danville. The elves work their magic, building toys, while the rest of the gang helps deliver the gifts to their rightful recipients. By the end of Christmas Eve, the nice status of Danville is restored and Christmas is saved. They did such a great job that even Santa himself drops by to personally thank them. Next, we have Summer Belongs to You, Phineas and Ferb's first ever hour-long special. The goal? To make this the longest day of summer ever. With the summer solstice into full effect, Phineas and Ferb are inspired to create the Sunbeater 3000, a rocket-powered jet plane that can travel as fast as the Earth's rotation. Their plan? To stay in daylight for a full 24 hours by flying around the globe. Bufford, the resident pessimist, bets that Phineas will fail, and if he's right, Phineas will have to admit that some things are just impossible. As this bet is revealed, Candice is worried about Jeremy, who's spending time in Paris, the city of love, while she's stuck in Danville. "You know what they have in France?" she asks Stacy. "French girls!" But when Candice sees that the boys' route will take them to Paris, she decides to join them instead of busting them. The adventure kicks off, and their first stop is Tokyo. Coincidentally, Dr. Doofenshmirtz and his daughter Vanessa are also in Tokyo, but their father-daughter vacation takes a turn when Vanessa discovers her dad Broad worked with him. In a freak accident, Vanessa falls from Tokyo Tower, but luckily the Sunbeater 3000 catches her just in time. The next stop is Paris, but the extra weight on the ship causes it to crash in the Himalayas. Fortunately, Baljit's uncle Sabu lives nearby and owns a rubber band factory. Phineas has the bright idea to use a giant rubber band ball to bounce the ship back into the sky. The adventure is back on track, and soon they arrive in Paris. And by arrive, I mean crash landing in the canals. While the others gather tools to repair the ship, Candice goes off to find Jeremy, with Isabella tagging along, secretly hoping for a moment with Phineas. Meanwhile, Vanessa confides in Ferb about how she feels betrayed by her father, and Ferb offers some heartfelt advice, even getting her a flower to cheer her up. But before he can return, Doofenshmirtz shows up on Agent P's hovercraft, and Vanessa reluctantly leaves with him. Back at the canals, everyone regroups and Phineas turns the Sunbeater into a high-powered water jet. Before they take off, Jeremy overhears Candice and reassures her that she has nothing to worry about, leading to the two finally becoming an official couple. With everyone in high spirits, the ship speeds off again, but it eventually breaks down on a deserted island. Phineas briefly loses confidence, doubting his ability to achieve anything he sets his mind to, but then he remembers Ferb's map. Using it as a giant paper airplane along with the last rubber band, the gang slingshots themselves off the island and back to Danville. Their final challenge comes in the form of road construction just as they're about to finish, but Bufford, having had a change of heart, returns all the bikes he's stolen, and together they use a piece of scrap metal as a ramp, flying over the construction site and landing safely in their backyard just as the sun sets. Yep, Phineas and Ferb have successfully circumnavigated the globe in one day. Before diving into Season 3, let's highlight a few of the boys' other contraptions from Season 2. Episode 11, Phineas and Ferb created a device that transports people into a video game. Episode 15, they built the hottest new game show on TV. They even traveled to the lost city of Atlantis in episode 36, and won a sandcastle building contest in the process. And let's not forget about the Beak, where Phineas and Ferb became Danville's coolest superheroes. In episode 61, they built a molecular separator that accidentally split Candice into two separate personalities. Alright, moving on, Season 3 kicks off with the Great Indoors, where a rainy day in Danville threatens to ruin the Fireside Girls' plans to earn their desert trekking patches. To help them out, Phineas and Ferb build a massive biosphere where they can simulate any environment imaginable. The girls trek through deserts, jungles, and even snowy mountains, earning all kinds of new patches along the way. Next up is Phineas's birthday clip-o-rama, a tribute episode celebrating Phineas's birthday with a montage of all his greatest inventions. The nostalgia is so strong as everyone looks back at their favorite moments, and even Perry the Platypus gets his own montage of heroic entrances and daring escapes. It's a heartfelt episode that serves as a tribute to all the fun adventures Phineas and Agent P have had. In My Fair Goalie, Ferb's extended family visits from the UK and they challenge him and his friends to a classic game of soccer. But Phineas takes it to the next level by introducing Football X7 rules, a more dangerous, high-octane version of the game played in a gravity-defying stadium. As expected, the boys managed to build the stadium in record time, and the game ends in a thrilling 44-44 tie, with everyone walking away having had a blast. Finally, in Tri-Stone area, we meet Phineas and Ferb's prehistoric doppelgangers, Funk and G. This episode takes us back to the Stone Age, where even then, Phineas and Ferb-like characters were coming up with wild inventions. It's one of the show's most meta episodes, with the creators occasionally jumping in to comment on the action. Of course, all the characters have their Stone Age counterparts, including Agent P, who's still going head-to-head with Stone Age Doofenshmirtz. Doofengung's latest plot? Using a Stickinator to rile up mammoths and drive his brother out of his treehouse. Meanwhile, back in the Stone Age, Phineas, Ferb, and their friends are hard at work on their latest invention, the wheel. "We're in the Stone Age, and this is a huge deal," Phineas exclaims as the gang marvels at their creation. But Funk and G, ever the innovators, take things even further by building the world's first car. Stone Age Candice, true to form, tries her best to bust them, but her plans are foiled when a mammoth destroys Funk and G's masterpiece. Some things never change, even 27,000 years ago. "Maybe we should wait until tomorrow to tell them about our new language," Phineas jokes. And next up, in the time-warping episode Doof Dynasty, we're transported to feudal China. In this timeline, Isabella is a princess who dreams of meeting up with her friends, but the evil Doofus Khan has other plans. Doofus Khan captures Princess Isabella, and only the mystical Master Perry can save her. Unfortunately, Master Perry has secluded himself at the top of the legendary unclimbable mountain of unclimbableness. When Phineas overhears Regent Monogram's dilemma, he decides that they, Phineas, Ferb, and their friends, will be the ones to climb the mountain and find Master Perry. Using their creative ingenuity, they reach the peak and persuade Master Perry to train them instead of fighting Doofus Khan himself. After a classic training montage, the kids head to Doofus Khan's castle for a daring rescue. But the villain makes a mad dash for Princess Isabella's castle, riding a giant mechanical dragon. The kids, armed with a colossal terracotta warrior robot, engage in an epic battle between the two massive creatures. In the end, they manage to defeat Doofus Khan and rescue Princess Isabella, saving the day once again. "Oh, I hate these things," Doofus Khan mutters, defeated. In the next time-bending adventure, Excalifurb, the Lady of the Puddle, Vanessa, gives Phineas and Ferb a quest to retrieve the legendary sword Excalifurb, destined to defeat the evil sorcerer Mifishmertz. Pixie Isabella joins them and explains the many challenges they'll face, including crossing the River of Uncertainty, braving the Swamp of Sour Attitudes, and venturing into the Cave of 10,000 Monsters, where the sword is hidden. Meanwhile, back at Mifishmertz's evil tower, he unveils his plan to conquer the Tri-Kingdom area using his army of meat minions. Yep, that's right. Blocks of canned meat that come to life when they absorb water. Mifishmertz believes these meat monsters are the key to his domination. With the help of Bowie the Windlord, Bufford, and Ballas the Strong, Baljeet, Phineas and Ferbalot overcome the challenges and retrieve Excalifurb. But just before the big showdown with Mifishmertz, the sword breaks. Luckily, the 10,000 monsters that were following them outside storm Mifishmertz's tower and engage in battle with the meat minions. Candice, having been transformed into a grotesque monster by a spell, also joins the fray. "Mom, what is this stuff?" Candice yells. In the end, Phineas and Ferbalot emerge victorious, returning to their village as heroes, and all live happily ever after. At least until their next adventure. Now next up, we have the epic two-part special, Where is Perry? The Flint Fletcher family embarks on a vacation to Africa, but Perry must stay behind for OWCA business. Meanwhile, Doofenshmirtz is working on his most ambitious device yet, the ultimate Evilinator, a machine that can turn anyone to the side of evil. And his first target? Major Monogram. However, the beam accidentally hits Carl instead, turning him into an evil mastermind. As the Flint Fletchers enjoy their safari, their guide, Iggy, points out an uncharted gorge that's considered too dangerous to explore. Naturally, Phineas and Ferb decide to build an unconventional vehicle that can navigate the treacherous terrain. But just as they're making progress, Bufford breaks one of the levers, and the group plummets into the gorge. Back at OWCA, the fallout from Carl's transformation is far more serious than expected. Doofenshmirtz, thinking he's infiltrating NATO's secret headquarters, is immediately imprisoned by Carl, who then sings about his newfound evilness in the catchy number Evil for Extra Credit. Agent P arrives, but he's blasted away by one of Doofenshmirtz's innators. While the question remains, where is Perry? In part 2 of Where is Perry, we pick up with Agent P missing in action. Carl, desperate to unlock the OWCA mainframe, realizes that Perry must have been hit by the Go-Hominator, a device that sends people to wherever they consider home. The Flynn Fletcher family robots head to their home to investigate, while Phineas, Ferb, and friends continue their search for Perry, who they believe is trapped in the gorge. Their journey leads them through a series of dangerous situations, including waterfalls and ravines, but Phineas is convinced Perry is somewhere down below. Meanwhile, Carl's investigation culminates in a tense standoff along the cliffs, where Major Monogram arrives with the Re-Goodinator, a device designed to reverse Carl's evil transformation. A chaotic battle ensues with robots, innators, and the return of Doofenshmirtz's evil schemes. In the end, Carl is restored to his good-natured self, and Agent P is finally allowed to return to his family. Now you might ask, why did the Go-Hominator send Perry to Africa? Well, because that's where his family, the people he loves most, was. In the episode 62, This Is Your Backstory, Doofenshmirtz reflects on the many ridiculous and tragic stories from his past. His Backstoryinator is designed to convert these memories into power, and the episode serves as a hilarious recap of one of the show's best running gags. One particularly notable backstory involves Doofenshmirtz's childhood in Drusselstein, where he was frequently bullied by a kid named Boris, who loved kicking sand in young Heinz's face. Doofenshmirtz also reveals how he ended up in America. His parents tricked him by disguising the side of a ship as a storefront. By the time Heinz realized what was happening, he was already on board, heading to the United States. But perhaps the most jaw-dropping revelation is that Doofenshmirtz once went on a date with none other than Linda Flynn, Phineas and Candice's mom. I know, mic drop, Doofenshmirtz says. Back in the 90s, Heinz and Linda went on a single date to a drive-in movie. We only had that one date, but it was an experience, Linda recalls. The date didn't go well, but during the outing, they talked about their dreams. Linda wanted to be a pop star, and as we know, she made that dream come true. Whereas Doofenshmirtz talked about his dream of taking over the world. When Linda Flynn casually suggested to him that he should start small, maybe just by taking over the tri-state area, little did she know she was planting the seed for his lifelong ambition. It is from that moment on that Doofenshmirtz's plans to dominate the entire tri-state area were born. Thanks, Linda, Doofenshmirtz quips, we wouldn't have it any other way. As season 3 comes to a close, let's take a look back at some of the fantastic adventures of Phineas and Ferb. Episode 7, the boys and their friends travel to the moon to test whether low-gravity cow milk makes better ice cream. Episode 20 sees them building a city-sized version of their favorite childhood board game. Meep returns in episode 42, whisking the gang off on another cosmic adventure to save the universe. By episode 51, Phineas and Ferb are solving the mystery of Danville's crop circles by building their own flying saucer. And in episode 58, the boys take over the airwaves, creating their own TV shows and commercials. And now on to season 4. It kicks off with For Your Ice Only, where Phineas and Ferb have already completed their daily invention, a fully operational ice rink in the backyard. Candice is determined to bust them, but Lawrence has already seen the rink and approves. In fact, he's so excited that he arranges for the kids to play an exhibition game during a local hockey match. But this isn't your typical hockey. It's an extreme post-apocalyptic version with fire-breathing monsters and crumbling ice cities. As Candice tries to expose the chaos, Doofenshmirtz's Abominableinator accidentally creates an abominable Zamboni that wreaks havoc on the rink. In the end, all is back to normal before Linda can even see the mess. Now next up is Mission Marvel, one of the series' many crossover events, and this time with Marvel Comics. After a misfire from his power Draininator, Doofenshmirtz accidentally strips iconic superheroes like Spider-Man, Iron Man, and Hulk of their powers. The heroes, seeking to regain their abilities, head to Danville, where they enlist the help of Phineas and Ferb. Meanwhile, their villains head to Doofenshmirtz Evil Incorporated to team up with the bumbling villain. Phineas and Ferb build a machine that can temporarily replicate the lost powers, but a mix-up during the process leaves the heroes with the wrong abilities. As chaos erupts at the Googleplex Mall, where the villains are causing mayhem, Agent P swoops in just in time to save the day. Doofenshmirtz, meanwhile, is trying to rebuild his power draininator but gets sidetracked by his own goofiness. Just when it seems all hope is lost, Hulk Jeet, Baljeet as the Hulk, the Beak, Phineas and Ferb's superhero suit, and superhero Agent P join forces to stop the villains. A timely crash of a space station restores the heroes' powers and they save the tri-state area. All thanks to Phineas and Ferb. In Phineas and Ferb Save Summer, Doofenshmirtz invents the Shift the Earth Further from the Suninator in an attempt to avoid getting sunburned. As expected, his plan has disastrous consequences, causing the tri-state area to plunge into a chilly fall in the middle of summer. To fix things up, Phineas and Ferb attach rockets to the top of Mount Danville to push the Earth back into its proper orbit. They even enlist help from kids around the world, strapping rockets to mountains everywhere. After some setbacks and unexpected help from Candice, they succeed in restoring summer. "Nice going, Candice," Phineas says just before their makeshift command center disappears. Probably the same place the last one went. Ferb deadpans. Episode 47, Act Your Age, offers a glimpse into the future, showing what life is like for Phineas, Ferb, and their friends as teenagers. Phineas and Ferb are deciding which colleges to attend, while older Baljeet and Bufford share their own future plans. The most important detail? Everyone is still curious about Isabella's lifelong crush on Phineas. Meanwhile, at OWCA, Major Monogram has retired, leaving Carl in charge, while Doofenshmirtz has abandoned his evil ways. Now, instead of battling Perry the Platypus, the two just go bowling together. The Fireside Girls have remained close over the years, with Baljeet and Ginger even hitting it off. As the gang prepares for college, the Fireside Girls come up with one final mission: getting Phineas and Isabella to realize their feelings for each other. But in a surprising twist, it seems their help isn't even necessary, as Phineas and Isabella finally recognize the connection that's been there all along. Phineas finally realizes after all these years that he and Isabella were meant to be together. Just before she leaves for Tri-State State, they share a heartfelt moment, finally acknowledging the feelings they've had for each other for so long. With newfound clarity, Phineas also decides to join Isabella at Tri-State State. "Wait, what's this? Oh, wrong letter," Phineas laughs before sealing their relationship with a sweet, long-awaited kiss. As the scene unfolds, Swampy Marsh closes the episode with a tearful yet humorous reaction. "It's just a cartoon, why am I crying?" But it's not just him, it's the end of an era. This episode, The Last Day of Summer, marks the final chapter in Phineas and Ferb's summer-long adventures. But don't worry, the boys have one last trick up their sleeves to make sure they go out with a bang. For Candice, however, this is her last chance to bust her brothers, and she's determined to succeed. Phineas and Ferb build their most spectacular invention yet. One that commemorates every single adventure they've had throughout the summer. And just like always, it manages to disappear before Candice can get her mom to witness it. But the story doesn't end there. After another failed attempt to bust the boys, Candice stops by Vanessa's place to return a DVD. While there, she stumbles upon Dr. Doofenshmirtz, who's in the middle of another one of his zany schemes. "Have you seen my nemesis? He was just here, about yay high," Doofenshmirtz says, searching for Perry. Candice is intrigued by one of Doof's latest inventions, the Do-Overinator, a device that can reset the day over and over again. And as you guessed it, a time loop is triggered, resetting the day continuously even without anyone pressing the button. As the loop continues, it rips in the fabric of space and time, start pulling random objects into a void. Even worse, people begin to forget things, simple things like spoons and oranges, and even bigger things like Phineas and Ferb themselves. Desperate to fix the ever-shortening time loops, Candice enlists the help of Baljeet, Isabella, and Bufford. They discover a strange reading in the space-time continuum and realize something is seriously wrong. In their attempt to save Phineas and Ferb, they throw a life preserver into one of the voids but end up getting sucked in themselves. Not all hope is lost though, because if we've learned anything about Phineas and Ferb, it's that they can do just about anything, especially when the whole gang is together. In the void, the kids use forgotten objects to build a massive catapult, launching themselves back to the real world. With the repeating days growing shorter, they have less and less time to fix things. In the nick of time, Candice throws a spoon at the Do-Overinator's self-destruct button, resetting the space-time continuum and bringing everything back to normal. To wrap up the final day of summer, the gang gathers under the iconic tree in their backyard to reminisce about all the incredible adventures they've had. As we close the book on Phineas and Ferb, let's not forget some of the other wild adventures from Season 4. In episode 13, the boys relax inside a massive floating ball of unformed water. In episode 24, they recreate the Trojan War inspired by the Iliad. And episode 29 features the boys building their own steam-powered machines. Episode 40 includes another epic crossover, but this time with the Star Wars universe. Oh man, what a show. Anyway, thanks for tuning in to Cartoon Mania. We've had a blast diving into the crazy worlds of your favorite shows, but the fun doesn't stop there. Remember, just like Phineas and Ferb, the only limit is your imagination. So go out there, make your day as epic as possible, and we'll be back with more wild adventures next time. Peace!